Puerto Rico has dealt with its share of disasters in recent years. You may know its entire energy grid also qualifies as something of a disaster. Now, despite billions of U.S. tax dollars, there's concern the system is on the verge of a total collapse, prompting the U.S. territory to declare a state of emergency. Hurricanes Maria and Irma destroyed most of Puerto Rico's power system in 2017. But it wasn't much to begin with.
Maria was essentially a huge wake-up call.
Manuel Leboy heads up the island's central office for recovery, reconstruction, and resiliency. You've had many hurricanes before, but that was the one that seemed to really trigger this realization that we better fix all of this.
So it is kind of a blessing in disguise, certainly. The silver lining opportunity is that we went through a very, very tough time. It cost us a lot, including lives. And moving forward, looking forward, now we have the chance to address something that we knew that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it's something that we needed to address.
With Puerto Rico in bankruptcy, a financial oversight board approved hiring an American-Canadian consortium called Luma Energy to deliver on the island's energy makeover. The company took the reins June 1st. But before that, billions of your tax dollars had already gone toward Puerto Rico's electric grid through the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. It was part of the most expensive disaster relief effort in U.S. history. Don Cortez is a Luma executive. The biggest single lump sum of money that had gone out the door as of about 2019 was $5 billion for the electric grid. What happened to that money?
It was put into what was the emergency repairs after Maria. So that's where that money went. Then FEMA allocated $10 billion, which is what we're now going to spend on upgrading the grid. So the $5 billion went to just the emergency repairs, paying the contractors that came, whatever equipment they used, and poles, whatever they did to restore service at the time. What the new allocation from FEMA is $10 billion. That's going to upgrade the grid.
Cortez says updating doesn't mean burying the power lines, but building modern concrete, steel, and composite poles that can hold up under an average 160-mile-an-hour winds. They're also doing major conversions to solar, wind, and battery sources.
People don't have any high expectations in general about what's going to come about from Luma.
Alberto Martinez, a history professor at the University of Texas at Austin, was born in Puerto Rico and has analyzed its many phases.
The main impression on the island is that prices will go up. They're already projected to go up from roughly 20 cents in the past 2 years per kilowatt hour to 30 cents. So that's going to be a 30% increase. In terms of the improvement of services, the popular impressions are split because there are so many people who were grossly dissatisfied with the world-class disaster that was our electric company and its perennial mismanagement, that they do see some hope in having this, American-Canadian firm, combination of these two firms come in and try to do things in a different way.
Luma's already been hit with a negative review. An early analysis claims the company's first months of service were marred by delays, damages, and poor service, which Luma denies. After a fourth hike in their electric bills this year, residents began taking to the streets in protest. At a recent congressional hearing, Puerto Rican power officials described matters as critical.
The system was repaired after the hurricane, but not restored.
That's why it's so critical that we continue on with repairs on generation and repairs and restoration on transmission.
Meantime, the entire project is operating in the shadow of a corruption scandal. After Maria, the FBI charged 2 FEMA officials in a bribery scheme. They allegedly steered $1.8 billion to a company called Cobra Acquisitions to repair Puerto Rico's electric grid. The head of Cobra was also charged. One of the biggest corruption cases had to do with the contract for electric stuff. So
What's your comment on that?
There's quite a bit of overview and control over this, where you're going to spend the money by FEMA, by the local government, and by the regulator. All of this has to be approved before you spend it, and they have to prove how you spend it and prove that you did spend it where you say you spend it.
How long, according to your plans, is it going to take before you have really big, meaningful change?
I would say that it's going to take 5 to 10 years to make a very, very big difference. Now, there are going to be people ask me, well, I might have to wait 5 years. No, we're going to be making a difference every day that we're here. We make a difference. But when you say a big difference, I would say it's going to take 5 to 10 years. We're trying to prudently and reasonably spend $10 billion.
And then in 10 years, if all goes well, if a big hurricane rips through here, what will happen?
2 things will happen. Number one, it'll be far less damage. There will always damage from a hurricane because of the strong winds and tornadoes and things like that. But number one, there'll be much less damage. Number two, we're going to have the manpower to quickly restore service here, equivalent to any best restoration of utilities in the mainland.
LUMA gets paid not on electricity sold, but through a management fee amounting to close to $1 billion over 15 years. That brings the total investment in Puerto Rico's energy grid to somewhere north of $17 billion for an island the size of Connecticut.